My friends, the System Shock remake demo is now out. In this video, we'll take a look at the demo, some impressions, and let's talk about the nature of remakes. Let's hop to it. Remaking a game that came out in 1994 to update for modern systems and modern audience has many challenges involved with it. System Shock is such an influential game, and many games carry its DNA with it in some form of degree, whether that's in the immersive sim style of games, but even extends to other genres as well. So, how are things looking with the demo? They're promising. Call me cautiously optimistic, but with what we've been given, I think the team at Nightdive Studios have what it takes to pull this off. The current demo is an alpha build, and while there is plenty of jank involved and some things will need fixing up, combat is a bit sluggish, and there were some performance hiccups, although that might be from my computer. There are signs that the team at Nightdive Studios have gotten the core of System Shock right, while updating it for modern quality of life improvements that have evolved in the gaming industry over the last 25 years. The game oozes with an atmosphere that the original System Shock wasn't able to do due to the graphic limitations at the time. Now, don't get me wrong, the original did a great job when it came to the atmosphere, but the remake feels far more in line with games like System Shock 2 or Dead Space, and the sense of dread of being trapped on a ship, along with creatures, robots, and an AI out to get you. Nightdive Studios have done a faithful design of the layout of the floor that we're given in the demo. There are no quest arrows or objective markers, which I'm happy to say, as I've talked in the past, that how much I feel these kind of things can ruin games. While you have a map for navigation, it's not telling you exactly where to go. Instead, you're piecing together what to do and where to go through the audio logs. Oh, Nightdive, unless I missed it, please allow me to add notes to the map like you could in the original. That's such a nice little thing to do. Controls are now based around the modern best practices when it comes to how the keyboard is laid out, to the user experience, to the user interface. When System Shock was released in 1994, it was during a time in the rise of 3D gaming. First-person games hadn't yet settled on a control scheme that would more or less carry over, and best practices hadn't been put in place yet, especially on PC. Now, this was something that they had figured out by the time System Shock 2 rolled around, but the original System Shock has awkward controls to say the least. I always feel the best comparison when it comes to how System Shock 1 controlled is think of something like a text editor like Vim or Emacs. While it does take a while to get used to something like this, it does eventually click with you, even though it's not the most intuitive and user-friendly. That said, this was during a time when this was still unexplored territory, and best practices hadn't yet popped up when it came to controls or user experience or user interface, especially for first-person games. The music here, well, I'm not sure if it's placeholder music or they're going to go with it, goes more for an ambient feel in contrast to more of the upbeat soundtrack of the original and System Shock 2. I am curious to see what they do with this, with the actual soundtrack for the game, because I think we could all agree, even though the soundtracks for the original and System Shock 2 at first seemed like they wouldn't be a good fit for the games, they strangely were. Combat does feel janky and does lack weight, but again, the game is not done, and on the Discord, the devs mentioned that they were reworking this to give more weight to combat. Granted, most immersive civs aren't exactly known for their stellar combat, with a few exceptions, but more about the sum of the parts, the combination of the exploration, piecing together everything that's happening in these worlds, all of these connected parts, and emergent gameplay that the immersive sim genre is known for. What's noticeably missing here in the demo is the cyberspace sequences from the original. While they are going to be in it, I am very curious to see how the team at Nightdive Studios pull these off. Hopefully they keep the rocking music. Everything we've seen so far in the demo is promising that they've gotten the core of the original right, while updating it for a modern audience. And that's the best thing we could ask for when it comes to remakes. And on that note, friends, let's talk a bit about the nature of remakes. I've done a video in the past about the nature of remakes, re-releases, remasters, and their benefits and their drawbacks when it comes to the industry as a whole. In that video, I make an argument for games that have maybe built up a reputation over time but are hard to play on modern systems, or were released on consoles that didn't get a lot of sales, for example the Wii U. System Shock falls under this, both in regards to the remaster and the remake. There was a enhanced edition of the original System Shock that came out a few years ago by Nightdive Studios. That said, there are aspects of the original System Shock that haven't aged well, especially in regards to the controls and the user experience. As I mentioned earlier in the video, this comes from a time frame when this style of game and genre was still mostly unexplored territory with what LookingGlass Studios was doing, and best practices and the meme had yet to have popped up. So to give System Shock a fresh overhaul with a modern user experience and control scheme without falling into the modern traps of user experience and keeping the core of the original is okay for me, and that's what I experienced while playing this demo, and hopefully we can all agree on that. Because it's the core of System Shock that still holds up wonderfully even 25 years later, and its DNA can still be felt in games since, whether that's other Shock titles like System Shock 2 or the BioShock games, future LookingGlass titles like Thief, or future immersive sim titles like Deus Ex or Dishonored, which I've done videos on in the past. They took a lot from the foundation that was laid down by System Shock, and to an extent Ultima Underworld, in regards to game design, mechanics, emergent gameplay, and this still exists in the DNA of games in a wide variety of ways and genres, and not just immersive sims. While I couldn't find if it's exactly the first game to use them, the audio logs were a great addition in a way of telling a story.
Shodan security's closing down on us. The elevators are frozen. Myra keeps saying that it's the cameras and the medical CPU core, that Shodan's using these to hold onto the level. That's all fine, but I don't really see how it helps.
They make sense for the setting and have still been used 25 plus years later to varying degrees of success. I think we can all agree that some games have made use of it in a lazy way of telling the story. So to give us a remake of a game that's been so instrumental and so influential in how games have turned out over time in the last 25 years, to give us a remake from a team that clearly cares about the original and preserving that core while updating it for modern game design is an admirable and challenging task, and I hope the end product is able to pull it off. From what we've seen so far, I feel they'll be able to. To know, Nightdive Studios was initially formed to get System Shock 2 running legally and easily on modern systems without having to dig into some obscure forums and workarounds to get the damn game running. So it's clear that they're big fans of System Shock, and playing through the demo, it's clear that how much respect they have for the original. Remakes can be a very challenging thing to pull off well, whether that's updating a game because you felt the tech is now right for it, like Resident Evil Remake in 2002, or you have a beloved title that over years has built up such a reputation and fans have been clamoring for, like Final Fantasy VII or Resident Evil 2, remakes can be a tough thing to pull off. What's different about System Shock as compared to, say, Resident Evil Remake or Final Fantasy VII Remake is System Shock is a cult classic that didn't sell overly well, especially in comparison to Resident Evil or Final Fantasy VII. So to take on this challenge of remaking a cult classic that has its DNA throughout gaming in the last 25 years since coming out, Nightdive Studios does have their work cut out for them. Here's to hoping they pull it off, and what I've seen so far in this demo, signs look promising. What's also interesting to note is immersive sims aren't really known, for the most part, with a few exceptions, as high sellers. So remaking System Shock, a cult classic with a great reputation that's built up over the years, was never a huge seller, and immersive sims tend to not have large audience. So this is coming from a labor of love. Who knows though, maybe the game will end up selling quite well. All immersive sims tend to have their devoted audience, but only a few have broken out more into the larger audience. So my friends at Nightdive Studios, take your time. I know you've been working on this game for a while, I know you've had some issues with engine switches and whatnot, but everything so far looks really promising with what you're doing. I think I could agree with most people that we look forward to seeing what you put out at the end of the day. Anyways, I have plenty of boulders I need to go destroy with my bare hands. So no rush, take your time. Thanks everyone for watching, I hope you enjoyed this. I'd love to hear how you felt about the demo below and your thoughts about remakes. Leave a comment, subscribe, you know the whole shebang. Anyways, I got some boulders to go punch. Boulder punch out.